Hello, this is Carrie Taylor with the Wasatch Beekeepers Association in Salt Lake City, Utah. And I would like to talk to you tonight about rendering your wax once you are done taking the cappings off your frames and spinning your honey. This is just sort of a nice way of utilizing the wax once you are done spinning your honey. First thing you need to do is have your tools available. I'm actually currently in my bee shed, but you can do this in your kitchen, although you need a very understanding spouse to do this because cleanup can be a mess if wax spills on your kitchen counter. The tools that I like to use for wax rendering are a couple different things. One is a crock pot. Once you use a tool for wax rendering, it pretty much will stay as a for wax only, and you won't be able to use it for food afterwards. So again, I use a crock pot. The other thing I do is I can put it into a double strainer with a pan, and I actually have, so I put this on top of the stove, and then I put this in, and then I put my wax cappings in here, and I'll show that to you in a minute. So just a large pan. Another technique is you can actually boil the wax directly on the stove top. I will give you a huge caution on that, and that is that it is flammable, it boils over quickly, and when it does, it makes a huge mess of your stove if you do this route. So you cannot leave it even for a moment because it's cleaning up wax once it's boiled over is a mess. So some other tools that I use some forms like an old bread pan to put things in. I use, when I'm sifting or pouring my wax, this is a Halloween play bucket, that sand bucket that I will use, and I'll show you how I do that. The other tool that I use a lot of is this 1 gallon elastic top strainers. They're paint strainers. You can find them in Home Depot in their paint section, and or buy them on Amazon where you can get a little bit better price. But they are available at Home Depot and probably Lowe's. And I use these a lot for straining my wax. Another tool that I use is actually a muffin tin, and I'll show you how that works when I'm at the end when I'm pouring the pure wax into forms to make it small for my hands to be able to use. So I look forward to talking to you about all my techniques tonight. So I have wax cappings here in a bucket that I've taken off. There's a couple different ways of melting this down so we can get some clear wax, and I like to keep my honey that is part of the wax cappings, so I actually drain it off. I will use a 5-gallon paint strainer. So, and you can use 1-gallon strainers also. They're a little bit smaller, but this is a 5-gallon. I actually use it as I'm spinning off my honey also. So these have been very handy for me. But I put all my wax cappings into this paint strainer, and then I put it into a bucket that has holes drilled into the bottom of it. And we created so that it sort of stands on top of a second bucket, and the honey will actually drain down when it's fresh out of the wax cappings and into my bucket. So basically, you can see I've already drained, and now I've got probably 3 quarts of pretty dark honey in there in my bucket that I can still use. First of all, you can see I've got some wax here. Take this piece. This is some wax that we've already rendered once. You can see it has all the gunk on the bottom of it. You can actually scrape off this, as I call it, gunk, and throw it away. It's no good. It's just leftover pollen and bee parts and all sorts of stuff. So you can take just a flat knife, and this gunk just sort of cuts off, whoop, just like that. And you want to get it so that it gets pretty clear. A lot of times the wax is a little bit thicker than this, but you can scrape it so it gets off, so it's a little bit clearer. and then just throw it in. We're going to actually be filtering this again, so I'm not going to worry too much about scraping some of this gunk off. But this is just, it's leftover propolis, bee parts, all that sort of stuff. But you can just, again, scrape it off so that it's, you know, if you've rendered it once and this is what you end up with, like that. So it is a little bit less stuff that you'll be filtering next time. There are many different ways of rendering wax. One of the methods is using a crock pot. So I have a lot of wax cappings from the first filter, or from the first spinning, in my crock pot, along with some other wax that I'm going to be filtering a second time just to remelt it. The big advice is add a cup or two of water. You don't really need very much water, but understand when you are adding water to this mixture, any honey that's left in there really won't do you any good because it will be diluted. And so whatever honey is left in the wax cappings at this point when you're adding water will be lost. So I have added my cup and a half or so, whatever, it doesn't matter, of water to the mixture. I actually have turned it on high just because it needs to heat up and melt. Realize that wax is flammable, so you want to stay close to your crock pot and not be leaving because you don't want to be catching things on fire, period. I have had the crock pot on for maybe 4 hours. All that honey has liquefied. Now what I want to do is get ready to start straining it. What I've done is I have a little plastic Halloween tin, that a kid's sand pail or something like that. And what works really well is to again pick up one of these. This is a 1 gallon paint strainer bag. Comes in a 2-pack from Home Depot, and it fits perfectly over the pail, so it gives me a pouring spot to pour out the wax. The best advice, of course, is not to do it in your kitchen so your spouse gets upset at you, but since it's my kitchen and I have to do the cleanup, I'm here. So I've got actually my pail inside another pan so that any wax drippings go into the pan. I'm going to just dip in. I just have a cup and then pouring it right into my filter. And my filter will actually pick up any of the debris. And then, of course, once the wax melts in here, then we have to let it sit and cool before we can do anything with it. You can already see some of the chunks that it's starting to pick up. So another thing you can use instead of these paint filters is nylons, of course without the holes in the toes, but nylons will work. Cheesecloth is another item that would work, but you would need to tighten it up and put a rubber band around your pan so that the cheesecloth doesn't slip. Any of those things will work to help filter out the wax. You can see on my pan, you can see it's starting to separate already. The light yellow on top is the wax and the darker fluid is the water that I had added to the crock pot. And that will just actually be wastewater. Another option of rendering wax is to do it over your stove. I have this set up as a double broiler, so I've got a pan with water in it and then another pan that I can just put the wax directly in. I'm not going to mix water with this wax this way, and it may help keep a little bit of the water out of the base when I'm when I'm putting it into the pot, so I may be able to not have quite as much volume, period. So I have added some wax cappings to this one. You can see that I actually have some wax on the top that was part of this cappings that hasn't dripped off, period. I'm hoping that this will actually settle out and I can use some of the wax that is left for future products, not so much for eating, but maybe for your hair or soap or something like that if you want to use honey in additional products like that, period. I'm lucky because I actually have a gas stove, so I can pay attention to this. The problem with the stove option is you have to pay much closer attention to it than in the crock pot, period. The crock pot you can sort of let to heat up and simmer. This is actually a faster way of melting the wax. It does work, but you have to pay closer attention to it so you don't have a fire. So the caution with this method is that my water can easily boil over in the bottom pan. So the nice thing with gas stoves is I can turn the temperature down pretty quickly so I can get so it won't boil over the water. But you can see it's starting to melt. You can use different type of strainers, like just this little strainer that you can use. Of course, once it's used for wax, that's all it's used for. You can use, I'm just using a new paint strainer. And this time I'm going to pour it into a used old little bread pan that I no longer use to cook in, but it gives me a different shape, still keeps the wax small, but it allows me to manage it this way. So I'm going to strain it through my paint strainer filter first, straight into the pan when it's done. Another idea is to heat up your wax cappings in a metal pot. You can do this in your oven. If you have a good pan, you can also do it on your barbecue grill. But you do need to watch it carefully because, again, it is flammable and you don't want a fire, period. But you can heat up this way and it will melt the wax and everything in it, and then strain it that way also. For cleanup's sake, it does help if you reheat your pan, and then you can just, and I've got gloves on to keep my hands sort of clean, but just be able to wipe out a lot of the wax. I will tell you, you want to avoid washing your pans in your sink or dishwasher because you do not want this wax going down your drains because it will clog your drains. It will solidify just like it does in our pans, and that's not what you want in your drains. So just heat things up. You can do the same thing with your coffee cups that you're using to pour or any of your instruments, but you need to heat them up in order to wipe them down. Another idea in cleaning up is with the paper towel is once you've cleaned up the wax and the grunge, that can make good fire starters if you have outdoor fire pits or wood fire in your home. You can do the same thing with that, and you can also do it with the leftover sort of wax mixture if you want. This stuff is dark enough. I'm not sure what I'll do with it, but you can use the residual stuff as fire starter. My wax in my double broiler worked well, but I have to keep a very close eye on it. I did pour it out into my bread pan, but I did discover that my little 1 gallon paint strainer fits much better and stays much better on the pail than it does on my low bread pan. But this is the wax I've gotten into my bread pan now. So it doesn't matter what kind of container you use. These have to cool off, and I'll probably leave them overnight to cool, and then I will take out the wax in the morning. So I've let my honey and wax cool overnight. So now I'm going to take off. So again, you can leave this out, turn it inside out, leave it out for the bees. I'm going to take off my cover and lift it out. It looks like I've stuck to my wax a little bit, but you can see that the wax actually peels off pretty easily even from the plastic, so it doesn't stick. But now you can see all the, as I term it, the gunk that is on this. So I'm going to be cutting off this gunk and cleaning up my wax. So now I'm just going to sort of peel off the wax. You can use this, you can use a hike tool, knife, and it's just, you just want to scrape it until it gets down to the wax, and you can see all the, it just peels off the crap. Sand, it feels like it's grainy like sand, but you can scrape it down quite a bit, and then when I get it down, then I may probably just refilter this wax again once more just to clean it up and get the rest of this off. Okay. So now you can see I've got it pretty cleaned up, and there's the other golden yellow of the wax. Need to pull off my bag. So, whoa, this is the leftover sort of wax or honey and water solution. It actually feels thick, like there is a lot of honey in here. It does have water mixed in with it, but because it's actual, you know, a lot of sort of a honey water, I'm probably gonna feed this back to my bees in my feeder inside my hives. So this one is a batch that I had cooked over the stove. I didn't add water to it, and I've gone around the edge and tried to clear it, and it was really stiff. So the suggestion is tip it upside down and whack it. And now you can see that this is a pretty clean batch of wax like that, and there actually wasn't any water left in it. So that's how that one turned out. This is the wax that I have received after letting it sit all night in my sand buckets, and I was able to get pieces of wax off, pretty thick, so it's nice because I had a lot of wax cappings in this. You can see that I still need to scrape the bottom of it a little bit cleaner, just so that I'm not having to filter out quite as much stuff. But once it's actually totally clean, the tool I like to use is, this is a metal water pouring pitcher. I like to put the wax in here when it's all clean and melt it. I melt it in a double broiler on my stove. So I've got water in the bottom pan, and then a lot of times I'll put water even in this one also. Yes, water will mix with the wax, but as it cools, it will separate. The nice thing is, once it's liquid and it's in this, even though it's mixed with water, at that point in time, you can go ahead and pour it into a container like my muffin tin or something like that, and get smaller forms. If there's water still in the wax mixture, the water will sit at the bottom and the wax will be at top. And when you take the wax off, the water you can just pour that out and throw it away then at the end. Although again, not down your drain. The other thing you can pour things into is pouring into here like this. These are some forms that I've gotten. This is actually for ice. I haven't used it yet, so we'll see how that works. This is an actual 1 pound beeswax form, so it gives me 1 pound bars of beeswax. These would be easy for using if you're trying to sell 1 pound beeswax, or if you want to hold it in your hand to rub over your new frames to get it coated with beeswax. This is another little, I think it's a cake form, silicone mold that I've used, And the nice thing about this is that then they just pop back out. But if you have water in the mixture, the water will sit down at the bottom of this and you won't get the like the bee and the honeycomb definitions with that. With my muffin tin, I have used the baking cups to put into the muffin itself, and then I poured the wax directly into it. And what that does is when I pour this out, it comes out like that, and then I can peel out my wax and it comes out like this. So it just gives me a muffin tin sort of look, but it makes it really nice if I need to hold it in my hand for scraping frames or anything like that. It just gives me a nice size for using when I'm just wanting to use it just to have wax that's easy for my hand. I hope that all this information has been really helpful to you. There are many ways of rendering wax and many other ideas out there. These are just some of the tools that I use. Again, if you have questions, you're welcome to contact us at Wasatch Beekeepers Association. We have a web page and we have a Facebook page, and you can send questions that way and we can answer your questions. And I hope you enjoyed this little presentation and have a great night. Thank you for watching.